Disclaimer, I do not have all the answers, nor do I claim to have all the answers. Do not treat what I say as gospel, and do not use it to talk down to aspiring writers. I'm just summarizing other people's ideas. Check the description for more information, and now, on with the video. Last time we began a discussion on audience reactions, beginning with cultural critical theories, actual cultural critical theories as defined by the literature, which is how different demographics, race, sex, social class, and countries of origin create, receive, and interpret different cultural works. But demographics aren't the entirety of the equation. In addition to demographics, we also have, cue the Talking Heads music, psychographics, qu'est-ce que c'est? Psychographics, an offshoot of psychoanalytic theory, is how different mindsets, personality types, values, character traits create, receive, and interpret cultural works. Psychographics is a relatively new field, currently being used by the business world, but slowly being adopted by the media industries because they find it is more reliable than demographics. For example, why is My Little Pony, a show intended for the female demographic, so popular with so many men? Well, demographics cannot explain it, but psychographics can. Psychographics can also explain why anime, intended for a Japanese demographic, resonates so much with audiences abroad. And finally, psychographics can be used to explain this bizarre decision by Sega when asked to turn one of their video games into an anime series. Hey Sega, I'm an anime studio. Would you like us to make a series based on Phantasy Star Online 2? And no thanks, people only play Phantasy Star Online 2 for the social experience. I mean, if they want the story, they could just play story mode. Would you like us to make a series of people playing Phantasy Star Online 2? Make 2 of them! That's right. Although there were multiple series depicting the backstory and lore of the game Phantasy Star Online 2, there was only one series covering the events of the game itself, specifically episodes 1 through 3, and there were 6 episodes in the game in total. However, not one, but 2 series were created depicting the social experience of Phantasy Star Online 2. Now, why would they come to this decision? Well, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand why. First, let's look at people's basic values. Now, this is the Schwartz value wheel, which looks at the basic human values. This version was adapted by Spencer Stewart for a business context, but it should give you an idea of what people want. The 2 dimensions of this model are safety and stability versus growth and flexibility, and personal focus versus social focus. For example, let's say 2 people were focused on safety and stability, but somebody who was more focused on themselves would want more achievement, results, and maybe authority or power, while somebody focused on others would want more security for their group, tradition, order, and conformity. Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, we have growth and flexibility. We have 2 people, one who's independently focused would focus more on their enjoyment or self-direction, learning, and stimulation. Meanwhile, somebody focused on others would focus more on benevolence, universalism, purpose, caring for others. You'll also notice that hedonism fits right between self-enhancement and personal progression. This comes from the Schwartz basic values model that puts hedonism right between the 2. We'll cover more why this is here when we get into uses and gratifications theory. But in a nutshell, we end up with 4 different categories from these 2 dimensions. We have self-enhancement, where we make ourselves better, and we have self-transcendence, where we make others better, and we got conservation, in which we try to fit in with the group, and progression, where we are open to change. If you're familiar with my older works, I read a lot of self-help books, and this sounds familiar, that's because the 4 basic human needs of certainty, uncertainty, love, and significance are a simplified version of the Schwartz basic values model. In fact, they even correlate. For here we have conservation, certainty, progression, uncertainty, self-enhancement, significance, and self-transcendence, love. Now you know the full version. So with these values in mind, let's turn to uses and gratifications theory. Uses and gratification theory looks at all the different reasons why people engage in different forms of entertainment media. Now, although this theory has evolved throughout the decades, I'm going to give you my little summarized version of it. The 3 main categories of uses and gratifications are the hedonic uses and gratifications, mainly for the emotion, the fun, feels, and fear, which we'll probably cover in a later video, the utilitarian uses and gratifications, the purely useful information, and the social uses and gratifications. Now, different entertainment media will excel at different uses and gratifications. Video games and movies and whatnot tend to focus on the hedonic gratifications, whereas multiplayer games, social media fall under the social gratifications, whereas videos like this, documentaries, Wikipedia, TV tropes, they fall under the utilitarian gratifications. But as you can see, a lot of these uses and gratifications don't fit under one category. Sometimes they fit in between two of them. For example, between hedonic and utilitarian, you have mood management. Some people will listen to music, watch movies, or play games to either change a mood they don't want to be in or enhance a mood that they're already in. Or self-reflection. They could look at something to affirm their values or look at something that challenges their values. So now if we go back to the Schwartz basic value model, we understand why hedonism fits under two different categories. On the flexibility side, it's used to change the self, while the stability side, it's used to regulate the self. Between social and utilitarian, we have knowledge attainment, where you look at a work to gain knowledge, which can help you engage with other people, or you have fandom participation, where you can create transformative works or share your ideas with other people, share lore, share backstory, share opinions and ideas. But one of the biggest categories of uses and gratifications, for reasons we'll discuss in a moment, fit between the hedonic and the social. And they are the immersion and identification uses, in which we look at a character and think, that's me. I can relate, this is my life, mood. And the parasocial interaction uses, in which we look at a character and imagine wanting to have a relationship with them. We think, I want to get to know this character. I want to be this character's friend, and anyone who's ever had a waifu knows what I'm talking about. If we go back to our example of Phantasy Star Online 2 and why it was given two adaptations of people playing the game but one of the actual game itself, we would find the uses and gratifications kind of overlap. They all have hedonic fun, the fun, feels, and fear that we discussed earlier, narrative immersion, mood management, narrative enjoyment, identification with the characters, and parasocial relationships. But by adapting stories of people playing the game, we double up on the identification, we double up on the parasocial relationships, plus we get to have parasocial fandom participations and social discussions, so we get a little extra than we would had we adapted just a straight anime of the game. Holy crap, I think I just explained the success of that World of Warcraft episode from South Park. So now that we've covered basic human values and uses and gratification theory, let's look at one model of psychographics, Young and Rubicam's cross-cultural consumer characterization model, or the 4C model. And I've adapted it to the adoption curve so we can see how different audiences accept different media over time, especially those that are open to change and those that are resistant to change. And by change, I mean either how a work is constructed or the tropes and motifs that go into it. The earliest audience types to any new media will be the reformers or the explorers. The reformers want to change how things have been done, and the explorers want to try new things. Once the work has gained enough early adopters, it attracts two new audience types, the succeeder and the aspirer. The succeeder sees potential in the work and they see it as a way to further their own status, while the aspirer sees it as the hip new thing that's in and they use it to fit in with others who enjoy it. Finally, once a media shows both utilitarian and social value, it is accepted by the mainstream audience. But, according to the research by Young and Rubicam, their biggest need isn't just safety and security. Their biggest need is love and belonging, meaning that the mainstream audience is the one most prone to forming parasocial relationships with fictional characters. So, if you want to know why Marvel, Disney, and the anime industry are so successful mainly focusing on characters over predictable plots, that should give you an idea. But we still have two more audience types, which are usually the last to leave old media and the last to adopt new media. They are the resigned and the strugglers. The resigned are the ones that see no use in new media and tend to cling to their old media. They're the ones that still use landline phones and don't get smartphones. They're the ones that still read newspapers and magazines and never transition to digital print. If you want to know why soap operas are still successful, using the same characters, the same cliches, and the same settings over 40, 50 years, well, there's part of your answer. Then finally, we have the struggler. Unlike the resigned who has access to the media but does not want to use it, the struggler does not have access or knowledge of how to access. It would be like asking someone who has never had the internet what their favorite YouTube video was, or someone who's never played a video game console what their favorite video game was. Now, this is just one psychographics model, and I encourage you to look up more models on your own. As I've said at the beginning of all these videos, I do not have all the answers. I encourage you to look up some of these models for yourself. But basically, all the different psychographic models run on values and uses and gratifications. Another example is this Jungian archetype model, which pits belonging versus freedom and stability versus risk, and has 3 archetypes each, which roughly correlate to the 3 different uses and gratifications: the hedonic, the utilitarian, and the social. Another popular psychographic model, which I'll briefly cover, is the VALS survey, or the Values and Lifestyle survey. And I've adapted it here for immediate context using everything we discussed. At one end, you have the individualist. These people march to the beat of their own drum and they consume whatever media they want. And at the bottom, you have the conformists. They consume whatever media their family, friends, and peers have told them to. And we have 3 different motivations in the middle, very similar to the 3 different uses and gratifications. You have the ideals, which is similar to the utilitarian uses. You have the achievements, which is similar to the social uses. And then you have the self-expression, which is similar to the hedonic uses. Now, I understand a lot of these models also factor in demographics, but I believe as the world becomes more connected and our social divisions begin to subside and as media becomes more and more accessible, I believe psychographics will start taking a precedence over demographics. And soon it won't matter the color of your skin or the color of your flag or what's in your pants or whose pants you're trying to get into or even if you can afford pants. I believe in the future psychographics will become more important than demographics. That's psychographics in a nutshell. We combine basic human values with uses and gratifications, and we can figure out what our audience is made of. And lastly, before I wrap up this video, somebody asked me, what if I don't have a target audience? Well, if you're just making it for yourself, you're making it for like-minded people. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer them as soon as I can. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next video, and good luck in your writing endeavors.